I never thought the cruelest words I'd ever hear would be spoken at my wife's funeral, and certainly not by the people who married into my family. But that morning in Atlanta, when I stood beside the woman I spent 40 years loving, my daughter-in-law's family decided they had the right to push me aside, as if I didn't belong there at all. What happened next is something I hope none of you have ever had to face. Yet I know some of you might understand this kind of quiet betrayal better than you'd ever admit. The morning of my wife's funeral, my hands wouldn't stop shaking. Not from the cold. Atlanta in late March is soft and mild. It was something else. I sat on the small vinyl chair in the family room of the funeral home, my dress shoes planted on that patterned carpet every funeral home seems to have, staring at the framed photo of my wife on the little table in front of me. In the picture, Denise was laughing, not smiling, not posing, just caught mid-laugh in our kitchen with flour on her cheek. Our daughter-in-law had picked that photo for the front of the program. I hadn't argued. Denise would have liked it. She hated stiff portraits. I thought we'd agreed the frame would sit next to the casket, right beside the spray of white lilies I'd ordered with the last card that still had her name on it. While I sat there, trying to steady my breath, I heard heels tap down the hallway. "Dad, we're moving the picture." That was my daughter-in-law, Vanessa. She stepped into the room without waiting to see if I answered, a tall woman in a black dress that probably cost more than my suit. Her mother and sister hovered behind her like a little committee, all dressed in the same kind of quiet luxury. "What do you mean, moving it?" I asked. I turned. The frame was already gone from the table. "It'll look better by the guest book," she said. "People can see her as soon as they walk in. It's about the flow." Her mother chimed in, voice smooth as lotion. "It's more welcoming that way, Mr. Harris. Trust me, we've done this before. Our side of the family has a certain way we handle these things." My jaw tightened. I had spent 40 years handling things with Denise. We got through deployments, layoffs, surgeries, bankruptcy scares. We didn't need a flow for grief. "Your mother and we talked about that picture," I said. "She always wanted it close to her. Right there, by the casket." Vanessa's mouth did that little twitch I'd come to recognize over the years. The one that was almost a smile, but not quite. "I know you feel that way," she replied. "But you don't really understand how we do funerals in my family. On my side, we welcome people in with a memory first, not a casket. It's a cultural thing." She said cultural thing like I'd never buried anybody before, like I didn't grow up in churches and funeral homes, saying goodbye to more cousins and uncles than I care to count. I looked at my son, Marcus, standing behind her. He wasn't the boy I used to carry on my shoulders anymore. He was a grown man in his 40s, beard neatly trimmed, tie knotted too tight. His eyes bounced between me and his wife. "Marcus," I said, "your mama wanted that picture by her side. You remember." He shifted his weight, fingers tugging at his cuff. We just think this layout makes more sense, Dad," he mumbled. "People will still see her." That "we" hit harder than I expected. I almost stood up. I could feel that old instinct rising in my chest, the same one I had the first time a drill sergeant got in my face when I was 19. My spine straightened a little, shoulders pulled back on their own. Then I pictured Denise, lying in that casket in the next room. The makeup woman trying her best to make her look like she was just sleeping. I heard her voice in my head, the way she'd say, "James, don't you start something today. Not today." So instead of raising my voice, I unclenched my hands. The tremor in my fingers slowed a notch. "Do what you think is best," I muttered. "I'm going to sit a minute." Vanessa gave me a quick nod, like we had just settled a small decorating question. "Thank you," she said, and turned away. "Mum, can you help me move the flowers too? The lilies are kind of old-fashioned up front. We'll put our arrangement there. It's more contemporary." She walked out, carrying the frame with my wife's laughing face pressed against her chest, like she owned it. Her mother followed. Her sister checked her phone. I listened to them giving instructions to the funeral director in the hallway. They didn't lower their voices. My name floated back to me once or twice, rolled around like an obstacle they needed to navigate. I sat there, back straight, eyes on the empty space where the picture had been. When you spend years being the steady one, people forget that steadiness has a cost. They see you swallow your temper, they see you let things slide, and they start to believe it's easy for you, that your silence is just your nature, not a choice you make over and over. In the Navy, they called me the calm one. I was the guy who didn't panic when a storm rolled in, who checked the lines and double-checked the knots while other men cursed and threw tools. I got respect for that. Quiet respect, but respect all the same. Somewhere along the way, in my own family, that quiet turned into something else. A knock came at the doorframe. "Mr. Harris." The funeral director leaned in. "We're about ready to start seating family. Your daughter-in-law said she'll handle the front row with the immediate relatives. You can wait here until everyone's settled, if you'd like." I studied his face. He looked uncomfortable, like he'd been told not to disturb me. "She said I should wait?" I asked. He cleared his throat. "She suggested it might be easier for you. Less stress with all the people coming in. Easier for me." I thought about all the nights I slept in hospital chairs while the niece coughed and winced. All the long drives back and forth when she started chemo. No one cleared the hallway then to make it easier for me. I just did what needed doing. "I'll be sitting up front," I told him. "That's my wife in there." He blinked, nodded quickly. "Of course, sir. I'll let them know." He disappeared down the hall. Voices rose again, sharper this time. I heard the word stubborn and my last name in the same sentence. I pushed myself up. My knees complained as they always do now, but they held. I walked toward the viewing room, past the framed certificates on the wall, past a table with tissues and brochures about grief counselling. When I stepped inside, the first thing I saw was the big floral arrangement Vanessa's family had sent. It sat right at the head of the casket, blocking part of the view. Bright white roses, a banner stretched across it, from the Thompson family. The lilies I'd chosen had been moved lower, off to the side, near the stand with the programs. The niece's picture sat by the door, next to the guest book. People would see her before they saw her body. Maybe that made sense to them. To me, it looked like they'd pushed her out of her own goodbye. Vanessa stood near the head of the casket, speaking with the funeral director in a low, clipped tone. Her mother nodded along, lips pressed thin. Marcus stood off to the side, hands shoved in his pockets. I went to the casket first. I didn't say anything, just stood there, looking at my wife. The dress we chose together years ago for someday looked right on her, even if it felt wrong on a body that didn't move. "They moved your flowers," I whispered under my breath. "And your picture." Guess I didn't speak up loud enough, Niecy. It wasn't a complaint, more like a confession. "Dad?" Vanessa's voice came from behind me. "We're going to start seating everyone. Can you stand by the guest book and greet people as they come in? It'll be comforting for them to see you there first. I turned. I'll sit right here, I said, next to her. Her eyebrows climbed a little. It's just, we had a plan, she replied. On my side, the elders don't sit right up front until everyone's inside. It's a respect thing. On my side, I answered, the husband sits by his wife. For a second, nobody said anything. The funeral director pretended to check his clipboard. Marcus glanced at the carpet. Vanessa let out a small breath. You're under a lot of stress, she said slowly, like she was picking each word with tweezers. I know you're grieving, but there are legal papers we need to sign today too. The house, the accounts. We're just trying to make sure everything is handled the right way. You don't have to worry about all the details. There it was. Not shouted, not thrown in my face, just slipped in under the disguise of concern. We'll talk about that later, I told her. Not now. It's all connected, she insisted. How we handle the funeral, what message we send to people. It all reflects on the family. Marcus and I have been carrying a lot, you know. Taking care of Mum, taking care of you, the house. Her mother added, He's been so tired, Mr. Harris. We just want to make sure things don't fall apart now that Denise is gone. She was the organised one, bless her heart. I felt something loosen in my chest. Not break, just shift. I'm going to get some air, I said. I walked past them, past the guest book with my wife's smiling face beside it, past the people starting to line up quietly in the hallway. A few reached out, touched my arm, murmured, Sorry for your loss. I nodded, barely hearing their words. The front doors opened with a soft push. Outside, the parking lot stretched out under a grey sky, cars easing in one by one. The smell of exhaust mixed with the faint scent of flowers from somewhere nearby. I stepped out, let the cooler air hit my face, and braced my hands on the rail by the steps. For most of my life, I thought biting my tongue was a form of love. You keep quiet so other people can feel comfortable. You swallow the insult so the room doesn't get colder. You carry the weight so nobody else has to bend. Standing there outside that funeral home, listening to the muffled noise behind the glass, I felt something else creeping in behind the old habit. A small, sharp realization that my silence wasn't being read as grace anymore. It was being treated like permission. I stayed outside longer than I meant to. People kept arriving, parking their cars, smoothing their clothes, walking toward the entrance with that slow, careful step folks use when they don't know what to say. A few nodded at me from a distance. Nobody approached. Maybe they didn't know if I wanted to talk. Or maybe they thought I was out there because I needed help standing upright. When I finally stepped back inside, the noise hit me first. Soft conversations, rustling papers, those small coughs people make when they're trying to stay quiet. Then came the glances. Quick, avoidant, like everyone had already been coached on how fragile I supposedly was. One of Vanessa's cousins, a man I'd only met twice, leaned toward another relative and murmured, Poor guy, isn't really all there right now. He didn't whisper very well. His companion nodded sympathetically, folding his arms as if he'd known me for years. I paused, not long enough to draw attention, but long enough to hear the cousin continue. Vanessa said he's overwhelmed. handling everything because he's not in a state to make decisions. So that was the story now. I walked past them without looking their way. Their voices faded as I approached the staff area. A young employee noticed me and stiffened. Her hands hovered over the stack of programs like she wasn't sure if she should keep sorting. "Mr. Harris, did you need something?" She wasn't rude. She was careful. Too careful. "I'm here to check on the seating," I said. "You told me earlier family was being brought in soon." Her eyes shifted briefly toward the hallway where Vanessa's relatives drifted in small groups. "Yes, sir. Your daughter-in-law mentioned she'd let us know when you were ready. We didn't want to pressure you." The words tasted wrong. I wasn't the one asking for space. Somebody else was arranging that silence on my behalf. "I'm ready now," I told her. "Oh, sure. Let me confirm with them." She hurried off, almost tripping over her own feet. A man doesn't get to 65 without learning what people look like when they're handling him instead of hearing him. I'd seen that expression on sailors who thought an older veteran should sit quietly and stay out of the way. I'd seen it on nurses after Denise's diagnosis when they tried to reroute information through our daughter-in-law because she processed things better. And now I was seeing it at my own wife's funeral. I moved toward one of the side rooms, needing a few minutes to collect myself. Before I reached the door, someone grabbed my arm. Not roughly, just firmly enough to stop me. "James, that you?" I turned. Marcus Davis stood there, dressed in a worn black suit that didn't quite fit across his shoulders. The man hadn't changed much since our Navy days. Still had that steady gaze, still carried himself like the deck beneath him might shift. His hair had gone white at the temples since the last time we sat down for coffee, but his grip was the same. Solid. Grounding. "You're the last person I expected to see," I said. "Denise meant a lot to me too," he replied. Didn't matter how long it had been. Had to come. He studied my face, then glanced toward the cluster of relatives gathered near the entry. "Something's off," he said quietly. I didn't answer, didn't have to. He'd always been good at reading tension in a room. "Who are all these people trying to run things?" he asked. "My daughter-in-law's folks," I muttered. He raised an eyebrow. "Thought this was your wife's service. So why are they acting like they're the hosts?" A long breath escaped me before I meant it to. They moved her picture, moved the lilies, took over decisions without asking. Now they're telling people I'm not in shape to handle anything today. His jaw tightened. "That true?" "No." "Then you sure as hell don't let them tell it for you." He'd always talked that way, straight lines, no curves. I rubbed my hands together, feeling that restless energy that comes when you're holding too much inside. "I don't want to cause a scene at her funeral," I said. "There's a difference between causing a scene and letting someone erase you," he replied. "This ain't about noise, it's about place, about respect." I didn't respond. My throat tightened too much to speak comfortably. He stepped a little closer, voice low enough that only I could hear. "You remember Baker?" he asked. That pulled a reluctant smile from me. The guy who let everyone talk over him until he blew up. Hard to forget. Marcus nodded. "And what did the chief say after that blow-up? If you don't claim your space early, someone else will build a fence around it. Same rule applies everywhere." I closed my eyes for a moment, not because I couldn't stand what he said, but because I knew I needed to hear it. When I opened them again, the funeral director was heading toward me, glancing nervously between me and where Vanessa stood. Mr. Harris, we're almost ready to begin. Your daughter-in-law asked me to check whether you'd prefer to wait until everyone is seated before you come forward. She said she's worried about stress on your... I held up a hand. I'll walk in with the family, I said. He blinked. Yes, sir. Of course. I'll let them know. The man hurried off. Marcus shook his head slightly. They told him you weren't able to handle this, didn't they? Something like that. You gonna let them keep painting that picture? I ran a hand down my face, pushing away the fatigue that kept clawing at me since Denise passed. I'm just trying to get through today. That's exactly why you need to step forward, he said. This day belongs to you and her, not to folks who don't know either of you beyond holiday dinners. His words settled into a place I'd been trying hard to ignore. I took a slow breath and straightened my jacket. When we walked back toward the main room, the whispering grew. Not malicious whispering, more like speculation. He looks confused. Poor man, he's grieving badly. Vanessa said he's been distant since the diagnosis. Maybe he isn't up for this. Nothing stings quite like hearing strangers discuss your mind like you're some unattended machine. As we reached the doorway, Vanessa intercepted us. She wore that practiced expression, concern stretched over control. Dad, I was just coming to get you, she said. We're about to begin. Are you feeling okay now? I studied her face. The careful tone, the way she included Marcus in her glance like she expected him to join her side. I'm fine, I answered. She nodded slowly, though her eyes said she didn't believe me, or didn't want to. Maybe you should sit toward the end of the front row, she suggested. That way, if you need a moment, you can step outside without interrupting anything. Marcus Davis shot me a look, the kind that said, You hear yourself being pushed aside. My pulse thudded once against my ribs. I'll sit where I've always sat, I told her, beside my wife. Her lips pressed together. Her mother shifted behind her, arms folded. This isn't a fight, Dad, she murmured. It's just about keeping things orderly. Putting me at the edge isn't orderly, I replied. It's unnecessary. You're stressed, she said. That word. Stressed. Not grieving, not hurting. Stressed. Like a child throwing a tantrum. Before I could respond, the funeral director approached again. We're ready when you are, sir, he said to me directly this time. Vanessa's eyes widened slightly, realizing the director wasn't waiting for her instructions anymore. I stepped past her. Not dramatic, not angry, just forward. Marcus followed a step behind. The movement felt small, but steadier than anything I'd done all morning. People parted as I walked to the front row. No one stopped me. No one redirected me. I sat down in the seat closest to the casket. My palms rested on my knees while I tried to control the tremor working its way through my fingers. Marcus slid quietly into the row behind me. That's better, he murmured. He didn't mean the seat. He meant standing my ground, even in that tiny way. The organ music began. Chairs creaked as people settled. Soft sniffles echoed across the room. I looked at Denise's hands folded neatly across her chest, the rosary she always kept on her nightstand resting between her fingers. Then the soft shuffle of footsteps behind me drew my attention. Vanessa's family filed into the front, careful to sit together. They ignored the space beside me as if it were reserved for someone invisible. My own son hesitated near the aisle. He glanced at me, then at his wife. She jerked her chin toward her parents. He followed them. I didn't say anything, just watched him take that seat not beside me but beside the people who'd rewritten my role in this day. A heat rose behind my sternum. Not anger, not sorrow, just something heavy enough to make me straighten my back again. The pastor cleared his throat, easing toward the podium. The murmur in the room quieted. As his first words began, I let my gaze drift briefly to the doorway. Marcus Davis leaned against the wall, arms crossed, giving me a nod. Not a big one, just enough. The sound of the pastor's voice blended with the faint stirring of people shifting in their chairs. The lilies I'd chosen sat off to the side, partly hidden behind a column. I rested my fingers on the edge of the chair, trying to keep them steady, trying to breathe through the tightness rising again. It felt like the room had already decided where I belonged before I even stepped inside. The pastor's voice drifted on, steady and practiced, but my attention kept slipping. People rose for a hymn, then sat again. A few sniffled. Others fidgeted with programs. I tried to focus on the service, on Denise, on anything that wouldn't tighten the knot forming at the base of my throat. When the pastor invited folks to come forward and share memories, I stayed seated. My son went up, said a few words that sounded like they'd been rehearsed with Vanessa's help. Her parents nodded proudly, as if he were reciting something on their behalf. After the service, people began to gather in small circles. I moved through them slowly, polite but quiet, shaking hands, accepting condolences. Vanessa's relatives formed a cluster near the reception table. They didn't look at me directly, only glanced and turned away, as if eye contact might obligate them to acknowledge something they didn't want to. I tried not to think too much about it, until a woman I barely recognized approached me. She looked familiar. Maybe she'd been at our church once or twice. She held a styrofoam cup of lemonade, clutching it with both hands. "Mr. Harris?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am. I just wanted to offer my condolences. Denise was a wonderful woman." "Thank you. That means a lot." She hesitated, shifting from one foot to the other. "And, well, I heard you're moving in with your son soon. She told me earlier, said it'd be easier for everyone." My breath hitched. Not much, just enough that she noticed and flinched a little. "Moving?" I repeated. "Who told you that?" "Your daughter-in-law mentioned it while we were waiting in line. She said you've been overwhelmed and it'd be best if the house went to them so they can take care of everything in one place. Streamline it, I think she said." For a moment, my thoughts scattered. That house was where Denise and I spent nearly 40 years together, where we raised Marcus, where we survived deployments and layoffs, where she planted her rose bushes, where we sat on the porch on summer nights passing the same iced tea glass back and forth because we were too comfortable to stand up and pour a second one. I swallowed. "I haven't agreed to anything," I said. "Oh. I must have misunderstood then. I'm sorry." "You didn't misunderstand," I replied quietly. Someone else did the talking. She apologized again and slipped away, leaving me standing there with my hands curling and uncurling at my sides. I looked toward the reception area. Vanessa stood in the middle of her family, speaking with quick gestures, her bracelets tapping against each other. Every now and then, one of them glanced my direction, then quickly looked elsewhere. Not one of them approached me. I started walking back toward the hallway that led to the office. A staff member passed by with a clipboard. When she recognized me, she slowed down. "Oh, Mr. Harris, your daughter-in-law asked us to run all questions through her today, so if you need anything..." Her voice trailed off as she tried to figure out how to finish the sentence without sounding disrespectful. "I can speak for myself," I said. Her cheeks reddened. "I'm sorry. I just didn't want to overstep." I let her go without another word. My legs carried me down the hallway on their own. A few feet ahead, the door to the administrative office was open a crack. I could hear Vanessa's voice inside. "He doesn't want to talk details, but trust me, he'll sign. We just need to handle it gently. He gets confused when things move too fast." My jaw clenched so hard something popped in my ear. I moved closer, but didn't push the door any farther, just listened. "Yes, I know the house is in both their names," she continued, "but Dad doesn't have it in him to maintain it now. We'll get everything organized. Just send the paperwork to me." My hands tightened at my sides, nails digging into my palms. I hadn't told her anything about my plans, because I had no plans. Not yet. And I sure as hell hadn't given anyone permission to speak about me, like some fragile man who'd lost his thinking. I stepped back before they noticed me and slipped into the small hallway leading to the coat room. It was empty. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out the thin folder I'd taken from the drawer at home that morning. The one with the deed to the house and the old will Denise and I made after her first surgery. I hadn't planned to bring it. I'd grabbed it without thinking, maybe out of instinct. Now it felt like the only solid thing I had left. I opened the folder and scanned the pages again, even though I knew every line by heart. Our signatures, written 20 years ago. Her handwriting next to mine, rounder, neater. That house was as much hers as it was mine. She'd chosen every curtain, every tile, every photo on the walls. A soft knock on the doorframe startled me. "James, you all right?" Marcus Davis leaned inside, concern etched across his face. "Just needed a minute," I said. "You've been gone a while. Figured something was eating at you." I didn't answer immediately. He stepped closer. "You're gripping that folder like it might float away," he said. "Want to tell me why?" I closed it carefully. "Folks think I've already decided to hand over the house." "Have you?" "No, and I sure didn't tell anybody I had." Marcus exhaled a low, frustrated sound. "Then someone else is planting that idea." "Yeah." He rubbed his chin, eyes narrowing. "Heard bits and pieces from the hallway. Your daughter-in-law's got her own version of events. Doesn't match what you told me earlier." "She's directing everything," I said. "Even the staff won't talk to me without checking with her first." "That's a problem." Another breath escaped me, heavier this time. "I don't want to fight. I just want today to be about Denise." And yet here you are, dealing with things Denise never would have allowed. That landed deeper than I expected. I slid the folder back under my jacket. "Marcus, you ever get the feeling people are rewriting your story while you're still living it?" He gave a short nod. "Happens more often than you think. Question is whether you let them finish the draft." I didn't reply. My throat grew tight again, but this time from anger instead of grief. Footsteps echoed down the hallway. One of Vanessa's aunts appeared, pretending she hadn't just been staring at me from across the room earlier. "Mr. Harris," she said with a sweet smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Everyone's asking for you. Vanessa said you might need help deciding where to sit during the burial ceremony." Marcus Davis gave me the smallest shake of his head like he was warning me not to take the bait. I steadied my breath. "I know where I'll be," I said calmly. "And I won't need assistance." Her smile slipped, only for a second before she covered it up with a polite nod. "I'll let her know." When she walked away, Marcus leaned toward me. "They're trying to herd you," he said, "like you're not steady on your feet. I know. You keeping track of what they're saying?" I tapped the folder under my jacket. "I'm keeping track of everything." He nodded once and left me standing in that narrow hallway, fingers resting on the folder like it was the last piece of truth I still owned. Somewhere in the reception room, another burst of conversation rose and fell. Someone laughed at the wrong moment and quickly muffled it. A door closed. Chairs scraped. I stood there, listening, sorting voices from echoes, and wondering how many people had already accepted a story I'd never spoken. I had barely stepped out of the hallway when Vanessa appeared again, blocking my path with that polished smile she saved for people she wanted to direct. "Dad, can you come with me for a moment?" she asked. "There's something we need to handle before the burial." Her tone left no space for refusal. She turned before I could answer, expecting me to follow. My legs carried me after her, because walking away in the middle of the crowd would have caused more confusion than I wanted. She led me to a side office, one of those small rooms with a conference table and a stack of pamphlets about estate planning. The door clicked behind us. A few of her relatives hovered near the entrance, pretending to sip coffee while listening openly. Vanessa placed a stapled set of documents on the table. "This is the authorization we talked about," she said. "The one that lets us manage things on your behalf. Bills, insurance, the house, the accounts tied to Mum." I looked down. A jumble of legal phrases covered the page. The funeral home logo sat at the top, like they were offering grief and paperwork in one package. "I haven't seen this before," I said. "Well, yes. I took the initiative." Her voice stayed soft, but the softness sounded rehearsed. "You've been through a lot." We didn't want anything else slipping through the cracks. My fingers hovered just above the edge of the paper. "I'm not signing anything today." Her expression hardened so fast the polite mask almost cracked. "Dad, this isn't complicated. It's a basic power of attorney arrangement, just temporary. We need it to keep the process moving." I said no. The room seemed to shrink by an inch. She straightened her posture and motioned toward the doorway, inviting her mother and aunt closer. "He's very emotional," she said, loudly enough for them to hear. "Grief can make things confusing." Her mother stepped forward. "Maybe he doesn't understand the urgency, Vanessa. Try explaining it again. He might not be processing everything clearly." She said it like I wasn't standing right there. A murmur rose from the people outside the doorway. One of the cousins whispered, "Poor man. Denise handled everything. What's he supposed to do now?" Another added, "Vanessa's doing the right thing. He needs guidance." The words piled up, small but heavy. Vanessa slid the papers closer. "Dad, all you need to do is sign here. Then we'll take care of the rest so you can focus on healing." "I'm not agreeing to anything without reading it," I said. "It's standard. That's why I handled it." "I didn't ask you to handle it." She blinked, startled that I'd spoken so plainly. "If you delay," she warned, "there will be legal issues. Denise didn't leave everything perfectly squared away. And if you're not in the right state of mind, stop." The aunt gasped softly, as if the word itself were an offense. "Dad," Vanessa said slowly, like coaxing a stubborn child. "We all see how overwhelmed you are. Nobody's blaming you. But we can't let things spiral because you're not able to make clear decisions right now. I exhaled through my nose, not sharply, just long enough to steady myself. Arguing in that moment would have felt like wrestling a current. Every answer I gave would be reshaped by their assumptions. "I'm fine," I said. "That's not what people are seeing," she replied. Her mother nodded in agreement. "You seemed confused earlier, Mr. Harris. That's understandable." Confused. That word slid beneath my skin. I folded the paper back toward her. "Not today." A flush climbed up Vanessa's neck. She glanced at the doorway again, checking her audience, checking the angles. "This is why I said he shouldn't be left to make decisions alone," she announced, loud enough for the nearby group to hear. "He's not thinking clearly." Her cousin nodded sympathetically. Another whispered, "He might be declining. It happens fast after a spouse dies." My mouth went dry. I wasn't angry, not in the shouting, fist on the table way. It was more like something inside me stepped backward, taking stock of the room, the people, their expressions. My reputation, 40 years of steady hands and clear judgment, was being rewritten, sentence by sentence. Someone outside the doorway asked loudly, "Does he even know what's happening with the house?" Vanessa raised her hands slightly, signaling calm. "It's okay," she said. "I've got it handled. He just needs rest." The certainty in her voice was what struck me most. She didn't sound concerned. She sounded confident, comfortable, like she'd already claimed the authority and was now soothing a crowd that expected her to lead. I placed both hands on the back of a chair, leaning just enough to keep my balance. My vision didn't blur, but the edges of my thoughts sharpened in a way I hadn't felt all morning. "Vanessa," I said quietly, "we're done talking." Her eyebrows lifted again. "But Dad, you can't." "We're done." I stepped toward the door. She moved aside but didn't back up far enough not to brush my shoulder. Her voice followed me, pitched higher and laced with frustration. "You're making this hard on everyone." A few faces stared as I stepped into the hallway, some concerned, some pitying, some irritated at the trouble they assumed I was causing. I kept walking. Marcus Davis caught sight of me from the far end of the corridor. He didn't ask a thing, just walked beside me as if escorting me through waters I'd crossed before. "What happened?" he murmured. "First real blow," I said. "Won't be the last." A young staff member hurried past us carrying a tray of water bottles. I moved slightly to let her pass. My steps slowed near the reception table where Denise's cookies, a recipe she used to bake for church events, were set out by a cousin of mine. Someone asked if I wanted one. I shook my head. My hand drifted to the inside pocket of my jacket again, feeling the outline of the folder. It grounded me, reminded me that not everything in the room was controlled by other people. I reached for the paper cup of water the staffer had placed on the table and took a small sip. The water tasted like nothing at all, but it settled the dryness in my throat. I didn't sit. I didn't retreat. I just stayed right where I was, letting the hum of the room settle around me while my mind moved ahead on its own. Marcus found me near the reception table, still holding that cup of water like I wasn't sure what to do with my hands. He didn't waste time easing into the conversation. "James," he said quietly, "I need to show you something." His tone carried the kind of weight I'd learned never to ignore during deployment. We stepped into a small alcove near the restrooms, away from the steady murmur of guests drifting between the viewing room and the lobby. He pulled out his phone, thumb hovering over the screen. "I didn't go looking for this," he said. "But when folks talk too loud, I can't unhear it." A text message thread appeared. Nothing dramatic, No threats or insults, just a few lines sent between two of Vanessa's relatives. She says he's soft, won't take long to get him to sign. Thought he'd push back at least a little. He won't. She knows how to nudge him. I stared at the words. They didn't shock me. They clarified something I'd been trying to ignore. Marcus lowered the phone. "She's setting the stage," he said, "telling anyone who'll listen that you're easy to sway, making sure nobody questions her when she takes over." A breath left my body, slow enough that I felt the ache in my ribs. "She called me confused earlier," I murmured. "Yeah, and now she's calling you weak. Next step is telling people you agreed to whatever she's planning. Then nobody bats an eye when she moves in." The truth sank deep. Not fast, deep. It hit places I'd been patching since Denise first got sick. My hand rose to rub the back of my neck, a habit I had when my mind raced ahead of my voice. "Denise told me not to let anyone mess with the house," I said. "She said it twice the week before she passed. I hadn't said those words to anyone since the night Denise whispered them." Marcus's eyes softened just enough to show he understood the weight of it. "She knew what that place meant to you," he said, "and she knew exactly who'd try to get their hands on it." The alcove suddenly felt tighter. I leaned a shoulder against the wall, not to rest, but to steady the anger rising through me. It wasn't loud anger. It was quiet, like pressure building onto a thick layer of earth. Footsteps passed by. A cousin of Vanessa's slowed when he saw me. "Mr. Harris, I heard you're moving closer to your son," he said cheerfully. "Must be nice to have family step up like that." He patted my arm before I could answer and walked off, humming to himself. A woman from our neighborhood approached right after. "I didn't know you were selling the house," she said. "Vanessa stopped by this morning and said you're downsizing." "Well, I suppose it's for the best. Too many memories in that place." Her voice carried sympathy, but the words sliced deeper than anything said intentionally. "I haven't sold anything," I replied. She blinked as if I'd contradicted a weather report. "Oh, maybe I misunderstood." She made it sound settled, the same phrase the other woman had used. She made it sound... I nodded once to end the conversation. When she walked off, Marcus stepped closer. "She's spreading this fast," he said. "I know. You gonna let her?" I didn't answer right away. My gaze drifted toward the viewing room. People moved around Denise's casket, leaving flowers, whispering to each other, stepping back with soft, respectful movements. "Denise called that house her anchor," I said. "Said it was the only place she ever felt settled. She told me not to let it get swallowed up after she was gone." Marcus folded his arms. "Then you honor that. You hold the line." The phrase hit something in my chest. My father used to say the same thing when I was a teenager. "Hold the line, boy. Don't let people push you out of your own life." I'd forgotten how much truth lived in that. Before I could respond, a husband and wife pair from our church approached. The husband gave me a sympathetic nod. "Son told me you're moving after the funeral," he said. "Guess that's why you haven't been talking about fixing the porch." Another assumption, another little rewrite of my reality. "I'm not moving," I said again. This time I didn't soften my tone. The wife frowned. "That's strange. Vanessa was so sure." Their confusion sat between us like a misplaced piece of furniture. I managed a polite nod and let them drift back toward the reception table. Marcus studied my face. "At this rate," he said, "they'll have half the city believing you already handed over the deed." I inhaled through my nose, steadying myself. "They're building a story," I said. "One where I'm stepping aside." "And you're letting them, for now," he replied. The last words weren't judgment. They were observation. I crossed my arms and looked down the long hallway where people moved like shadows, some offering condolences, some whispering, some clinging to the version of events they'd been fed. Marcus waited. "I'm not sure how far she's willing to go," I admitted. "As far as you allow," he said plainly. A long silence stretched between us, not uncomfortable, clarifying. A staff member approached, holding a stack of documents. "Mr. Harris?" she asked timidly. "I was told to give these to your daughter-in-law. They relate to the burial arrangements. Should I?" "Give them to me," I said. Her eyes widened. She hesitated. "Vanessa said, 'Give them to me.'" I didn't raise my voice, didn't step forward. The firmness alone made her surrender the stack. "Yes, sir." She hurried off. I tucked the papers under my arm with the folder I'd been carrying. Marcus watched with a small nod, as if noting the first inch of ground I'd reclaimed. I didn't smile, didn't straighten, didn't make any dramatic declaration. Just adjusted the documents in my grip and let my next breath settle deeper in my chest. And for the first time that day, the choice in front of me became clear. Stay quiet and let them take everything Denise valued. Or start taking back the pieces of my life they'd already begun dividing among themselves. I didn't return to the reception room right away. My legs took me down the side corridor toward the small family lounge where I'd left my coat earlier. The walls felt narrower than before, maybe because I finally understood how far things had already drifted out of my hands. I shut the door behind me and let the quiet settle. My coat hung on the back of a chair. I reached into the inner pocket and pulled out Denise's folder again. The weight of it steadied me. Grief didn't disappear, but something colder began to slide into its place. Focus, maybe. The kind I used to get when storms rolled in on the ship and there wasn't time to hesitate. I spread the papers across the small coffee table, the deed, insurance policies, her medications list, the will we signed 20 years ago. Denise kept everything organized. I hadn't realized how thorough she'd been until now. Her handwriting appeared on one of the envelopes, a neat label she'd written during her second round of chemo. House documents, keep safe. My fingers lingered on the ink. Then I started sorting, page by page, line by line. Each document went into its own stack. Every name was checked twice. When something didn't match what I remembered, I set it aside to review later. A knock interrupted me. The funeral home receptionist peeked inside. "Mr. Harris? Sorry to bother you." "What is it?" She stepped in, closing the door behind her before speaking again. "I thought you should know. Your daughter-in-law called earlier. She asked us to update some of the burial instructions and send confirmations to her email instead of yours." The muscles in my back tensed. "Which instructions?" I asked. "The order of the graveside sequence, and something about the transport arrangements afterward. She said you weren't in the right state to manage the details today." I looked at the table, at the neat stacks of paper I'd sorted with the same precision I used to maintain equipment during inspections. "Did she request anything else?" I asked. "She mentioned reviewing the billing later, said she'd handle payment decisions if needed." My jaw set at that. "Thank you for telling me," I said. The receptionist hesitated. "I wasn't sure if I should. She seemed very firm about taking charge, but, well, you're her father-in-law. It felt wrong not to inform you." "You did the right thing." She gave a small nod and slipped out.
Silence returned.
Not peaceful silence, alert silence, the kind that warns you a situation is shifting faster than anyone notices. I gathered the documents into a single stack and sat down. My thumb traced the edge of the old will. Denise's voice surfaced in my mind again. Not the frail whisper from her last days, but the steady one from months earlier when she was still strong enough to fuss over the curtains. Don't let anyone change that house, James. Promise me. It's ours. I'd told her I would. The promise felt heavier now than her wedding ring sitting inside the drawer at home. I took out my phone and scrolled through old contacts until I found the number I needed. Attorney Samuel Tompkins. He'd helped Denise with a few paperwork issues the year before she passed. Nothing complicated, just updating beneficiaries and medical directives. He always treated her with respect, even on days she could barely stay awake. I pressed call. He answered on the second ring.
Harris, I wasn't expecting to hear from you today. I'm sorry for your loss.
Thank you, Sam. I need some guidance.
Of course. What's going on?
I glanced at the door again, making sure it was closed. I think someone's trying to take control of Denise's estate without my consent. A pause. Tell me exactly what happened. I walked him through the last few errors. Vanessa changing the funeral arrangements, spreading stories about me moving out, gathering relatives to pressure me into signing documents I hadn't read. Sam didn't interrupt. He didn't mutter things under his breath or gasp the way most people would. He listened the way professionals listen, quietly, waiting for facts. When I finished, he spoke in a calm, measured tone. Do not sign anything today. Not a line. Not even something that looks harmless. I wasn't planning to. Good. Bring me everything you have, every document, every message, every instruction that came from anyone except you or your wife. I'll look at the will first thing in the morning. I appreciate it, Sam. This happens more often than you think, he said. People spot an opening when someone's grieving and try to turn it into an advantage. But the law favors the spouse. Stay steady. Don't let emotion decide anything. Emotion had been burned out of me a few hours ago, replaced with something closer to clarity. I'll come by tomorrow, I said. And Harris? Yet? You're not alone in this. The call ended. I sat for a long moment, breathing slowly. My pulse settled. The tremor in my hands lessened. Not because I felt better, because the path forward had shape now. As I reached for the folder again, another knock sounded. This time it was one of the junior staff members, the young woman from earlier with the clipboard. Her posture looked stiff, like she was bracing for something. Sir, I wanted to let you know something quietly. She stepped inside, folding her hands. A few minutes ago, someone from your daughter-in-law's family called the front desk asking about, authorizing the release of your wife's death certificates. They said they'd pick them up so you wouldn't have to deal with paperwork. Death certificates. One of the most important documents for insurance, property rights, accounts, everything. Did you give them anything? I asked. No. We told them only the legal next of kin can pick them up. They pushed back a little, but we held the line. I nodded. Thank you. Her shoulders relaxed. I just thought you should know. It felt unusual. She left as quietly as she came. I gathered the papers into the folder and held it against my chest for a moment, letting the firmness of the cardboard steady my breath. People think storms arrive with thunder.
but most start with shifts so small only someone who knows the sea can feel them. A change in the wind, a dip in the temperature, a silence where waves used to be.
This wasn't a storm yet, but the current had changed direction, fast and decisively. I slipped the folder under my arm and reached for the door. My hand hovered on the handle, steady now. Somewhere in the building, footsteps moved in the direction of the office. Voices murmured, unhurried, confident. I opened the door and stepped back into the hallway. A staff member guided the crowd toward the cemetery shuttles, and the hallway buzzed with movement. I stepped out of the lounge with the folder tucked under my arm, intending to join the line. Before I even reached the door, Vanessa intercepted me again, this time with no attempt at soft kindness. "Dad, you should sit this part out," she said. "The graveside service is going to be long, and you look worn out." Worn out. Another quiet way to say unfit. "I'm going," I replied. She flashed a smile that didn't match her eyes. "It's better for everyone if you rest. We'll update you afterward." Denise was my wife. I'm attending. The smile fell. Her family, clustered nearby, paused their conversation. They watched her, waiting for her cue. She let her voice rise just enough for them to hear. "He's not stable enough for the graveside portion," she announced. "He needs to sit down before he collapses." A few relatives shook their heads in pity. Someone whispered, "Poor man, he shouldn't be out here." Another added, "Vanessa's doing the right thing. He's fragile." Fragile. The word hit harder than anything she'd said before. I tried to step around her. She shifted directly in my path, blocking me. Then she placed a hand firmly on my chest, like I was a child trying to wander into traffic. "Dad, please, don't make this harder. We're trying to protect you." "Let go of me," I said. She didn't move her hand. The funeral director approached with an uneasy expression. "Everything all right here?" Vanessa turned toward him so fast her hair brushed my shoulder. "He's exhausted," she said loudly. "He shouldn't be at the burial. We'll escort him home after the service. His emotions are too unpredictable." Unpredictable. As if I was some man shaking uncontrollably or yelling at strangers. I hadn't raised my voice once all day. The funeral director looked at me with that same expression I'd seen earlier. The careful one. The cautious one. Before I could speak, Vanessa continued. "We're trying to prevent a scene." That landed like a slap. My mouth opened, but the words jammed in my chest. Behind her, a few guests paused before stepping outside. They frowned at me, sympathy and worry etched across their faces. Sympathy for something that wasn't even real. Vanessa folded her arms. "Dad, your health comes first. That's why we're stepping in. Let us handle the rest." I took a slow breath through my nose. Marcus Davis appeared near the doorway, watching silently. His jaw tightened, but he held his position. "I'm attending," I repeated. She exhaled sharply and stepped aside, but her voice chased after me as I walked toward the exit. "This isn't healthy, Dad. You're not thinking clearly. People see that." A few heads turned toward me when she said it. Some sad, some confused, some confirming her story. Their eyes felt like small weights pressing against my back. By the time we reached the cemetery, the clouds hung low, and a damp breeze threaded through the rows of headstones. People arranged themselves around the grave. Vanessa directed them with smooth gestures,
standing close to the pastor, whispering instructions that should have been mine to give. I walked toward the front, but she stepped quickly to block me again. "Dad, please, just sit over there." She pointed to a chair off to the side, slightly behind her family, out of the inner circle. "That's not my seat," I said. "It is today," she whispered. Then she smiled at the pastor, as if everything were fine. I looked at the chair she'd assigned me, not far, but far enough to send a message that I was no longer the center of my own wife's farewell. I didn't move toward it. The pastor began speaking. People bowed their heads. I stayed standing. My hands trembled slightly, not from cold. Grief mixed with humiliation, tightening my chest. I kept my eyes on Denise's coffin. That was the only steady thing in the moment. My son approached timidly. "Dad, maybe you should sit," he murmured. He didn't look me in the eye. His voice wavered, caught between loyalty and fear of upsetting his wife. "Go stand with your family," I said quietly. He hesitated, then stepped back toward Vanessa. The pastor continued the prayer. A few people dabbed their eyes. Vanessa's mother nodded approvingly when my son rejoined them. Not one of them noticed the weight anchoring me in place. When the ceremony ended, the funeral director gestured for immediate family to approach. I stepped forward, but Vanessa darted ahead of me, blocking my path for the third time that day. "We need to go inside after this," she whispered. "There are documents waiting. If you sign them now, we can avoid delays with the insurance and probate. If you refuse, the accounts tied to Mum may be frozen temporarily. Nobody wants that." Frozen. Another threat disguised as concern. "I'm not signing anything today," I said. Her jaw tensed. "Dad, don't be stubborn. You're making things worse. If you keep refusing, you could force the estate into a legal hold. We're trying to prevent chaos." "You're creating it," I replied. Her eyes narrowed. "I'm doing exactly what Mum would have wanted." That was the first time she used Denise as a shield. Something in me recoiled. People began to drift toward their cars. The pastor shook hands with Vanessa's father. A few relatives offered polite nods to me and hurried away. The funeral director approached again. "Mrs. Harris asked me to bring the paperwork to the main office," he told me. Mrs. Harris. Not Mrs. anyone. She wasn't even blood. Vanessa smiled at the director. "We'll meet you there in 10 minutes. Then she looked straight at me. "Dad, stop fighting us. You're hurting yourself." Marcus stepped closer, hands tucked into his pockets, voice low. "You all right?" I swallowed hard. "I'm fine." "Doesn't look like it from where I'm standing." Vanessa's voice rose again. "He's overwhelmed, Marcus. It's been a long day." Marcus turned his head slightly, looking right at her. "He's not overwhelmed. He's grieving. There's a difference." She stiffened but didn't reply. I inhaled slowly, watching the last few guests leave. My eyes drifted back to Denise's coffin being lowered inch by inch. The finality of it should have been the only pain I felt. Instead, I stood there wrestling with a threat wrapped in polite instructions. If I continued to stay quiet, if I let them speak for me, if I allowed one more lie to take root, I'd lose more than a house. I'd lose my place beside Denise, my voice, my dignity, the life we built under that roof she loved. The cemetery groundsman walked past, tipping his hat. The wind carried the faint scent of fresh soil. Vanessa was already walking toward the shuttle, her relatives forming a protective circle around her. They moved as one unit, confident, certain the story was theirs to write. Marcus stood beside me, waiting. I didn't tell him what I was thinking. I just tightened my grip on the folder under my arm and started walking back toward the cars. The parking lot outside the cemetery was still crowded when a silver sedan pulled into an empty space beside mine. I didn't recognize the car, but I recognized the man who stepped out. Samuel Tompkins, carrying a slim leather briefcase. He walked toward me with a steady, purposeful stride.
"Harris," he said, "I know today isn't the day for business, but I needed to bring you something your wife left with me." The words hit me so hard, my fingers tightened around the folder I was holding. Denise left something. From me? He nodded once. She gave it to me months ago, told me only to release it if certain pressures ever came your way. My throat grew tight again, but not from grief this time. He reached into his case and pulled out a sealed manila envelope with my name written in Denise's handwriting. Neat, even strokes she used when she wanted something to be unmistakably clear. She was very deliberate, Sam said. Wanted to make sure you had this if decisions were taken out of your hands. I opened the envelope carefully, sliding out a folded document and a small USB drive. The document was a new will, dated 3 months before she died. Clear, updated, unquestionable. It named me as sole executor and sole beneficiary. No co-signers, no shared authority, no mention of Vanessa or anyone tied to her. Behind it was a handwritten letter. "James, if they ever try to pressure you, don't let them. I know how people talk when someone is grieving. Don't let them change our home." Underneath the letter lay the surprise, the USB drive. "What's this?" I asked quietly. Sam adjusted his glasses. "Your wife recorded conversations she overheard. Things your daughter-in-law said around her. Denise told me she suspected long-term interference. She didn't want to upset you while she was still fighting her illness. But she wanted you protected once she was gone." The breeze brushed my jacket, but the rest of the world felt unnaturally still. I turned the small device over in my hand. A simple thing, light, almost flimsy. Yet it carried more weight than anything Vanessa had thrown at me all day. "How much is on it?" I asked. "Enough to show a pattern. You can listen when you're ready." I tucked the envelope inside my coat. Vanessa's voice drifted across the lot from somewhere behind me, sharp and irritated. She was talking to my son again, her words clipped. "He's being stubborn. You need to talk to him. He won't listen to me." My son answered too softly for me to catch everything, but I heard enough. "Maybe we should wait. He just buried Mom." "No," she snapped. "The longer he waits, the harder this becomes. We need him to sign today." Need we sign? I closed my eyes briefly, letting the pieces align. They'd pushed me at the funeral home. They'd pushed me at the burial. They'd pushed me in front of neighbours, staff, relatives. They believed they had momentum. They believed I wouldn't stop them. More importantly, they believed I couldn't stop them. Sam placed a firm hand on my shoulder. "You have legal ground, Harris, strong ground. But don't confront anyone today. They're emotional, You're emotional. Wait until tomorrow. We'll handle this properly. I nodded, absorbing each word. Across the lot, Vanessa noticed me speaking with Sam. Her expression tightened. She marched toward us, her heels clicking against the pavement. My son trailed behind her, caught between confusion and worry. "Dad, are you all right?" Vanessa asked, stopping a few feet away. "We still need to go over those documents." Sam stepped slightly to my side, not defensive, just present. "We're not discussing documents today," I said. "But Dad..." "No." Her eyes narrowed. She wasn't used to the word no, not from anyone, least of all me. "You're making things difficult," she said. "We're trying to help you. Why are you letting other people confuse you?" I almost laughed at the irony, because the only confusion around me was the one she built, brick by brick, with whispers and half-truths. "I'll review everything in due time," I said calmly. "Until then, don't speak for me. Don't make decisions on my behalf. Don't tell anyone where I'm moving or what I'm doing with the house." Her mouth opened as if to argue, but I didn't give her the chance. "Those conversations end now." The silence that followed carried more impact than any raised voice could have. Her confidence wavered, just slightly, just enough for me to see it. My son looked between us, unsure what to do. He finally asked, "Dad, you're really not moving in with us?" "No, I'm not." Vanessa exhaled sharply, almost a scoff. "So you're just going to isolate yourself? Sit in that house alone until something happens? That's irresponsible, Dad. We're trying to prevent mistakes." She emphasized the last word like I'd already made several. Sam cleared his throat gently. "Mrs. Harris, Mr. Harris is fully capable of managing his affairs. If you have questions, direct them through me." Her jaw clenched. "Who are you?" "His attorney." She stared at him for a long moment, then at me, then back at the manila envelope tucked under my coat. Her expression shifted. I'd seen that look before, on sailors who realized the wind had changed direction when they weren't paying attention. Confidence cracking, control slipping, certainty dissolving. The ground wasn't hers anymore. She turned abruptly and walked back to her car, her family following like a flock pulled by invisible strings. My son lingered for a moment, but Vanessa called his name sharply, and he moved after her without looking back. Sam gave me a small nod. "I'll expect you at 9 tomorrow morning," he said. "Bring everything." "I will." He headed to his car. I walked toward mine, slower than before. Not from exhaustion, just from the weight of understanding finally settling into place. In the quiet of the driver's seat, I rested the envelope beside me, my fingers brushing against Denise's handwriting one more time. Pieces that hadn't made sense all day began sliding into formation. Her recorded conversations, the new will, the timing of Vanessa's pressure, her certainty that I wouldn't resist, the stories she spread, the narrative she built, the confidence she carried. Her weakness wasn't greed, it was assumption. The assumption that I was a man who would never fight back. I started the engine, the low hum steadying me, and pulled out of the cemetery lot. The funeral director guided me toward a small meeting room they used for billing and paperwork. I stepped inside first. Vanessa was already seated at the table, posture stiff,
eyes narrowed like she'd been rehearsing the line she planned to use on me. A thick folder sat in front of her. She pushed it toward my side of the table the moment I sat down. "Dad, we're not dragging this out anymore," she said. "These forms need your signature. Once you sign, everything will settle. No more confusion, no more delays." Her voice carried the clipped tone of someone speaking to an unreasonable patient rather than a grieving husband. I didn't touch the folder.
"Let me see what you brought," I said. She slid it closer with both hands, impatience rolling off her. "It's the power of attorney, the funeral billing transfer, and the first housing adjustment form. All routine. If you just sign where I marked, everything will be handled without stress." The word housing rested in the air like a cold pebble dropped into water. Instead of reaching for the papers, I pulled Denise's envelope from inside my coat and set it quietly on the table. The movement made Vanessa pause. Her confidence flickered. "What's that?" she demanded. "Something Denise prepared," I said. Her eyebrows rose, confused at first, then wary. "Dad, we already have her will, the old one. You don't need 'this isn't the old one.'" I slid the new will across the table. She stared at the title page before flipping through the first few lines. Her expression changed one muscle at a time. Surprise, disbelief, panic moving across her face like a spreading crack. This isn't valid," she whispered. "This can't be valid. She never told me about any update. She didn't tell you because it wasn't your business." Her jaw clenched. "This is fake. Someone made this for you. Denise left it with her attorney. He delivered it today." That single sentence knocked something loose behind her eyes. Her breathing quickened. She flipped through the pages faster, the soft rustle sounding almost frantic. She lifted her chin in defiance. "Even if this is real, you're not in a state to interpret it correctly. You're confused." I let her talk. I'd let her talk all day. Every lie she threw now only dug her deeper. She pointed at the document. "Mum wouldn't cut us out like this. She wouldn't leave everything to you alone. She knew we would take care of you. No, she didn't trust you to." "That's not true. We've been helping you for months." "You've been helping yourselves for months." Her voice rose enough to echo off the walls. "You're lying. This is a lie. You're doing this because you're afraid of handling things alone. It's not your fault, but you're twisting everything." The door opened. She froze. Sam Tompkins walked in, briefcase in hand. Vanessa's face drained of colour. "Who are you?" she asked sharply. "Ms. Harris, I'm attorney Samuel Tompkins," he replied. "I was your mother-in-law's legal advisor, and since her husband remains fully competent, I am now representing him." She took a step back. No, this isn't happening. You can't just walk in here and override everything we've put in place." Sam placed his briefcase on the table. "Everything you put in place is being reviewed for impropriety, including several actions the funeral home staff reported to us this morning." Her eyes darted to me. "Dad, you called a lawyer. You think I'm stealing from you?" Sam answered before I did. "We have recordings that indicate your intent to influence Mr. Harris into surrendering control of his property." Mrs. Harris documented things carefully. She knew what was happening long before today. The USB drive appeared in Sam's hand. He set it beside the will. Vanessa stared at it like it might detonate. "What is that?" she whispered. "Evidence," Sam replied. "Hours of recordings. Your mother-in-law recorded conversations you had about taking over once she passed.
including discussions with your family about pressuring Mr. Harris into signing documents he did not understand. Her legs seemed to weaken. She gripped the back of the chair to steady herself. "That's illegal," she hissed. "She couldn't record me without... Georgia law allows one-party consent," Sam said simply. "The recordings are admissible, and they are already logged with the estate court." She swallowed hard. "You can't be serious. This is blown out of proportion."
"We were only trying to. You were trying to take control of assets that were never promised to you," he said evenly. "And you attempted to isolate Mr. Harris socially and legally. That is financial exploitation of a surviving spouse." Her mother and father appeared in the doorway, alarmed by the raised voices. They stepped inside, forming a defensive wall around her. "This is outrageous," her father snapped. "You're twisting our intentions. We were helping the man." Sam didn't look at him. "The court will determine that. But every attempt to force signatures today has been documented by witnesses." Her father's face reddened. "You can't take this to court. We'll fight you all the way." Sam raised an eyebrow. "You won't get far. The will is airtight, and the recordings demonstrate motive." Vanessa's mother crossed her arms, trying to salvage the situation. "We were doing what any caring family would." "Denise didn't trust any of you," I said quietly. "That's why she came to Sam. That's why she recorded you. That's why she left me everything." The room went still. Vanessa's voice cracked. "Dad, don't do this. Don't throw away your family." "I'm not the one who tried to take it." Her shoulders sagged under the weight of the truth finally exposed. Sam closed his briefcase. "Mr. Harris, you don't need to remain here any longer." I rose from the chair. My legs held steady, even as the adrenaline eased. Vanessa took a small step forward. Please wait. We can talk about this. We can fix it. I was trying to help. I was scared. I didn't want you alone. I didn't." Her words fell apart, each one thinner than the last. I didn't answer. I didn't accuse her. I didn't console her. I didn't remind her of everything she'd done. There was nothing left to say. I walked toward the door. The carpet muted my steps. The hallway outside was quiet, except for the hum of the building's heating system. Behind me, I heard a muffled sob. Hers, maybe her mother's, but I didn't turn around. Sam followed at a respectful distance. I kept walking, the envelope pressed against my ribs, the weight of it strangely steadying. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vindictive. I felt released. The air in the hallway felt clearer as I pushed open the door and stepped toward the afternoon light. The house felt different the moment I unlocked the door. Nothing had changed inside, but something in me finally had. I stepped into the foyer and let my hand rest on the wall where Denise used to lean when she took off her shoes. The air carried a hint of the lavender cleaner she preferred, faint but familiar. I hung my coat and walked toward the small sunroom she claimed as her sanctuary. It sat at the back of the house, overlooking the camellia bushes she planted the year after our son was born. The afternoon light filtered through the curtains she sewed herself, casting soft patterns across the floorboards. Her rocking chair waited in its usual place. I moved a small stack of magazines she had left beside it, months before she fell ill, wiped the dust from the side table, and placed the new will on top. Centered, steady, unhidden. A quiet confirmation to myself that I had kept the promise she asked of me. The house stood untouched, her wishes held firm. A breath pushed out of me, long and even. The kind of breath that comes after days, weeks, sometimes years of holding everything in. I lowered myself into the chair across from hers. The cushion let out a soft sigh. From this angle, I could see the marks on the floor where she used to drag the table closer when she worked on her crossword puzzles. My eyes drifted to the blanket folded neatly on the love seat, the one she crocheted during her final winter. Everything reminded me she wasn't here, and for the first time since she passed, the ache didn't twist into guilt. It just settled, quiet and honest. Grief standing alone, without shame attached to it. A car drove by outside, then another. Normal life continued around me, noisy and indifferent. Inside the house, silence stretched across the rooms, but it didn't feel empty. It felt earned. My phone buzzed once, a text from Sam. Filed the documents. They've been contacted. You won't be hearing from them directly. I set the phone aside. Another message arrived a moment later, this time from my son. Dad, I left her parents' place. I'm staying with a co-worker until I figure out my next steps. I'm sorry I didn't see things earlier. I didn't respond right away. I needed a moment, not to think, but to feel what those words stirred. Relief, sadness, something like forgiveness, but not the kind you say out loud. He would learn his own lessons. He'd already started. I typed back only, "Take care of yourself. That's enough for now." No lectures, no scolding, no reopened wounds, just space. The quiet settled again. I stood and walked into the kitchen, filling a glass of water and letting the coolness calm the last of the adrenaline still pulsing in my hands. The chair scraped lightly on the tile as I sat down. Outside, the breeze rustled through the camellias, brushing the branches gently against the window. Vanessa and her family would spend the next weeks answering calls from lawyers, reviewing recorded conversations, signing statements they didn't want to sign. Their confidence would erode under the weight of responsibility they never expected to face. I wouldn't be part of any of it. I had no interest in watching them unravel, no pleasure in their consequences, no need to revisit their names in my home ever again. The refrigerator hummed softly. A dog barked somewhere down the street. I traced the rim of my glass with one finger and let my mind drift, not to the chaos they caused, but to the steadiness Denise gave me for so many years. There was nothing left for me to reclaim now, no battle waiting, no signatures to refuse or accusations to answer. Just the long quiet of a house that finally felt like mine again. Later that evening, I walked back to the sunroom. The will still rested on the table. I placed Denise's reading glasses beside it, a small gesture that felt right, though I couldn't have explained why. My knees cracked a little as I sat on the rug. The wood beneath me held the warmth from the day. I leaned forward, elbows on my thighs, letting the rhythm of my breathing anchor me in the moment. I wasn't thinking about revenge. I wasn't thinking about fairness. I wasn't thinking about the people who tried to rewrite my life. Just the quiet, just the steady truth that stayed after the noise faded. At some point I stood again, switched on the small lamp and began tidying the room, straightening the books on the shelf, folding the blanket again,
picking up a loose thread she never finished trimming. My movements weren't rushed, they weren't ceremonial. They were simply part of settling back into a place I had almost lost. When the room felt right, I turned off the lamp and walked down the hallway toward the bedroom. My hand brushed the wall once more, not out of habit, but out of gratitude. I paused at the doorway and looked back toward the quiet sunroom. The house didn't feel like a battlefield anymore. It felt like home. I slipped into bed without turning on the overhead light, listening to the muted creaks the house made when it settled for the night. Denise used to say those sounds meant the house was tired from holding our memories all day. The thought tugged at me gently, like a soft thread being pulled through cloth. My eyes closed. No promises of new beginning, no dramatic resolutions, just the soft certainty that I no longer owed anyone explanations or apologies. The floorboards cooled, the breeze quieted, and the house, our house, rested with me.